Hi everyone, I'm Declan McGlynn. This is Freddie Frogs. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight live from East London. Today we're looking at Ableton Live and optimizing your controllers for live performance. So this is one for all you control freaks out there. We're joined by Ableton Ninja and also a certified trainer, Freddie Frogs. He's going to be guiding us through the do's and don'ts when making the most of your controller on stage. So welcome, Freddie.
Hi, Declan.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you.
Good,
Very
good.
happy to be here again. Hi, everyone. So today we'll look at just two little easy to apply techniques to optimize a little bit your controller on stage mostly. I mean, one of our main concern when performing with Ableton Live on stage is basically the baggage, the way and the how much we can take on a plane.
Yeah.
So,
and what you can fit in the stage and on the booth.
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff,
also there's never enough space for your live performance. They all have decks everywhere. You're like, where do I set up, dudes? But there's a bit of space for you there in the corner. Sorry, I need a lot more space usually. But anyway, so there's loads of controllers out there. The choice is really huge. However, I always advise the students to actually, do not invest too much money when it's your first controller. Try to take something that's generic, small, portable, and that way you're going to learn how to optimize it, because there's loads of parameters to take in consideration when setting up such controllers. And I feel that having something that forces you to be clever about it at first is a really good way to start when you're starting your performances. So this demo, I'm using a live set style, setup here where it's my own production, where all the kicks, snares, bass, hats are all separated on different channels. It's like a live set as opposed to DJ set. However, the skills I'm going to demonstrate or the techniques I'm going to demonstrate are transferable to your DJ-like set or even mashup set, okay? So the idea is to make the most of our control surfaces, our controller. I'm using the brand new Lovation launch control here. That's a really clever little piece of equipment. It's really portable and it's Novation. Novation is always going to be good, isn't it? They're really good at what they do. I mean, the Launchpad here, I've used it for 3.5 years. It hasn't failed me once.
Really?
Yeah, no, it doesn't move. I've opened it once and there's just one printed card inside. There's no wire and whatever. It's really solid. It looks a bit plasticky and stuff. However, that makes it really transportable and light. I mean, the same goes with this series, the new series they've come up with. It's really cleverly made, and in fact, this little box here will let you control almost every aspect of Ableton Live somehow. They've got user mode where you can actually remap everything manually. There's 8 templates on that. There's a factory mode where the machine sort of latches on some of your parameters, some of your devices automatically for you, and some of these factory presets let you control, the pan, the volumes, the sounds, and that's hardwired somehow. It's control surface type control. However, I personally on stage would not advise anyone to start scrolling through your banks of pages and stuff. This is not what it's about. It's about having a full set of controls available right here, right now, instantaneously. It's like playing an instrument. I don't want on stage to have to look at my computer screen for a start if I can. And also, I don't want to have to scroll through pages on my controller. This is just everything but performance. I want to contact with my crowd. I want to be completely jamming on it. It's an instrument, okay? So the idea is to have it all sort of like available at once. No banks, no presets to go into, okay? So the idea I've got for you today is just simply how we could make it so just one dial on your controller could actually control many different effects throughout your performance. In fact, it's like every time I launch a specific clip, a specific effect comes in and attaches itself to that dial and affects the sound. And that's done automatically. I don't have to think about it. I prepare it beforehand. And for every sound, I choose the best effect, the one that works best with this sound. For instance, so just to take you through quickly. So I've got this, let's hear it. Right, I've got this little vocal sound here. I'll just do some other sound. And a bass line maybe. So that vocal sound, that girl, is the one I'm going to affect, okay? So that dial here is now going to control it. You can see on my screen, I'm going to put it up for you. This is the system I've come up with. And now I'm controlling the spray on my quarter tone delay. Now if I now activate the next clip down on my set, this one, I now have a beat repeat on that same dial. On that same dial on the controller. So that controller dial is now not a delay anymore, it's a beat repeat.
Yeah.
If I start the next sound, I'm getting a flanger. And every time I activate a new clip on that channel, on that track, now I've got a delay. You see, and I'm controlling the delay. So the delay or the other effects do come automatically. You see, it's attached to the clip, and every time I launch that clip, that very specific effect comes into play, and that dial controls it.
Because a lot of people would say, this is going to be my reverb, this is going to be my delay, this is going to be whatever.
That's right.
And then throughout the whole set.
Exactly, that's my reverb, that's my delay, that's da-da-da. Now we have a whole set, a whole array of effect coming into play automatically, and always it's assigned to the same dial. Imagine, I'm only doing this with one dial. I can do this with every 16 dial here. So every 16 dial completely transforms or changes the effect it controls every time I launch specific clips. Very convenient, isn't it, you'd say. Also quite CPU manageable. I mean, it's quite effective, efficient, that's the word I was looking for. Good, so let's show you how to do this, how we do this. Okay, so it's really simple, you'll see. It's nothing too difficult about this. Look, that's the channel, it's called Mellow 1, there's channel 5 here, it's enabled there. And I'm just gonna load an audio effect rack. In fact, when you're performing and you're setting up your performance, I always advise, no matter how many effects you're using, always rack them up. Always rack them up. That way, it's all contained, reusable, and much more malleable. So let's say, okay, the first clip. Let's go and launch this guy. All right, that voice. As I said, maybe, you know, a delay on it would be nice. Okay, so I'm going to just click, hold, drag a delay into that rack, okay? So racks are like containers where you can load many different devices. And within the rack, we have something called the chains right there. Okay, and chains are just like channels, tracks in Ableton Live. You see, they have volume control, pan, mute, solo. Just like the regular channel, the regular tracks we have in Ableton Live. However, they contain within the rack. Now, the racks offer the opportunity to create a parallel system. Instead of having series chain where our effects are one after the other, we can stack our effects up so that they all receive the same dry sound simultaneously. It's opening a lot of doors and a lot of possibilities. So I'm going to rename that delay, for example. And so I'm going to now look at the second clip. And I want a beat repeat on that, just like I had it before. And I'm going to load the beat repeat right there. You see, I'm not loading the beat repeat in the same chain, and instead, the beat repeat now has its own chain. You get me? That's really important. Don't load the beat repeat on the same chain like so, because that gives you a series chain within the rack. We don't want that to happen. We want that to have its own little chain, so now both chains receive the same signal simultaneously. However, the racks have an amazing feature called the chains, and you can hide it and show it right there. This little orange guy on top there determines which chains receive the signal. We have a range. You see this little blue guy, they're a little bit fiddly to work with, right? This is like a strip here. You can extend it, move it, right there, these guys, okay? And you can spread them along a MIDI range. You know, all MIDI range have 128 increments. They go from 0 from 1 to 7. Same goes here. It's almost a freely assignable MIDI range. So this little orange control here, when it hovers above the blue strip, the signal is passed on to that very chain. When it's not hovering above the strip, no signal gets into it. So that's how we're going to decide which effect affects every single clip. I'm just going to do it with 2 chains, and the principle will be, you know, the same no matter how many effects you have in there. So that's as simple as it gets. Look, I'm going to select the little orange guy. There's a little square around the whole thing here. It's selected, okay? Because the last thing you touch, the last thing you select, will come up as an envelope in your clips. So I'm now going to switch into the clip view. And this is my waveform, it's my clip. I open obviously the E button down there on the bottom on the left here, and that opens what we call the envelopes. They're like automations, right? And you see, automatically in the envelope box, the chain selector, that's the name of the orange guy, the chain selector is automatically selected. Okay? And I can now, freely place it. I'm going to say that first clip. I'm looking at the first clip, yeah? Cool. The first, oops, I'm not looking at the right channel. There you go. This channel, sorry. So the first clip, I'm selecting it. I want to place this little guy here, okay? So somewhere above the blue strip that's actually matching the chain. I'm going over to the clip itself, and I find a little line that actually is matching now the position I just set. I just look here and I click, I create a node, okay? And that's now going to lock the position of the orange selector to that position when I click the clip. Second clip. I want that second clip to be actually set. I'm going to select the clip. I'm going to, once again, I got the wrong channel, sorry. I select the clip, and now I move this little orange guy above the strip. That's got the other effect on. And now, on the clip, I find the strip, which is somewhere higher up, up there, you see, and I click and create a node, so I lock it in there. Now look what happens now. When I look at the orange strip now, there's a red dot on top of it. That means there's an automation, an envelope that's been written for it. Now when I trigger the first clip, look at the orange guy, it just moved above that line, meaning the delay unit receives the signal and then affects that clip. When I engage the second clip now, look at the orange guy, it's jumping over to the other strip. You can have as many chains as you want. You can have I don't know, let's say 50 different effects, all really set up specifically for each clip. So it works exactly the way you want it to work. Now, how did I assign one dial to control all of these effects? That's a lot more straightforward. Let me show you. I'm going to hide the chains, that's done and dealt with. I'm going to open the macro controls. So these are like internal controls, you could say, just like a controller within a rack, okay? And you can assign effects parameters that are contained in that rack to these macros. Nothing too difficult. Look, I'm going to assign the spray on the grain delay to macro 1. Right click onto the spray, right click onto the spray and map to macro 1. There it is. All right, so now when I move that dial here called macro 1, you see the spray moves over, right? And it's just being controlled. I can also obviously set up what we call a range with the map button here. This is like your MIDI map mode, range control. You can enable it, and now your browser turns into a list of all the mappings you've done. On the right hand side here, you can specify the range of your control. Now, the great thing about this mapping mode is that you can actually test it while it's actually enabled, while it's green. It's not the case with the MIDI map mode, the blue mode. You have to come out of the blue mode to test it. Yeah. While with the macros, you can actually test it while you're still engaged. That's convenient. So you see, I'm now controlling the spray, but the range of it is lesser, is not as great as it was. You see, from 106 to 270, it doesn't go all the way down, all the way up. So that's really important. I can do the same thing with my repeat, for instance, where I would set it up properly, like so, for instance, or maybe on a quarter here. And I would like to set up the grid to be controlled with that same dial. So I'm going to right click once more onto the grid and apply it, map it to the same macro. Of course, it's not going to conflict because you realize now that only one effect will receive the sound with my chain control. So it's okay to map all of these effects to the same macro because I'm only hearing one effect at a time. So I'll map it to the same macro. And now when I move the macro, you see the grid now is also moving. Obviously, once again, you can set up a better range for it if you wanted to, okay, that way. So finally, go into your MIDI map mode, Command M, that's an interesting shortcut to remember here. Command M goes into map mode. And you can basically, hit that macro, move the dial on your controller, it's assigned, and that's it. Now that dial will control all these effects simultaneously within the rack. However, only one effect is heard at any given time.
Okay, so all the knobs are moving, all the parameters are changing, but they're just not being heard.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And that's as simple as it gets. Really clever little setup where you can have as many effects as you want assigned to specific clips. Wow. I wish I knew that years ago.
Yeah. But is it possible to automate let's call him the little orange guy. Is it possible to automate him moving as well?
Yeah. Okay. So if the orange guy has been
Chain selector,
the
of
chain
course,
selector.
yes.
Let's
This
be
is very formal.
academic. Sorry. The chain selector, if it has an envelope written for it, it will still respond, I feel, to your controls. Let's have a try. Let's have a try. It's an interesting question. I feel it might not be. You see, let's try that together. Let's go into a different user mode here. There. Oh yeah, it's a sign. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's not moving, is it? Oh,
okay.
Yeah, no, it is moving.
Okay.
I wasn't.
And then
yeah, okay,
the clip
cool.
will override that.
Declan,
Then?
you've just added a wicked trick there. Because now, look, if I set, let's try that together, guys. We're making this up as we go, dude. Let's just hit that. Oh yeah, that's working. Okay. And still, I can now override. Yeah, we can override. Yeah, so the effect will be selected automatically, but you can still override it.
Yeah.
Pwah.
Awesome.
How come I didn't think about that?
Don't know, man.
Dude. Right. Along the same line, I'm going to show you something else that has bothered me for years. You know, when we used to have analog gears, you know, what our sequencer, our hardware sequencer on stage would send program change to our synthesizers around us, and all the sounds would update automatically, and you know. And so we still use that with soft synths. We can still send what we call program change. That's basically changing the sound on your synthesizers, different patch, different preset. However, unless, you know, there's something I don't know about, but I've been searching quite hard for that. Internally within Ableton Live, we can't do that. So you can't change the program within Ableton Live on an Ableton Live onboard synthesizer.
Right. You can only do it on external stuff.
And this is what I'm going to do. You can do that on some externals. Not all of them are compliant for some reason. However, there's another way to go around this problem, and I'm going to show you this now. Let's do this. Okay, I've got a MIDI track here, and it's loaded at the moment just with one synth from Ableton Live. That's the Collision, I think. That's the top one here. And it's also in the chain, you see. This time I'm not using an audio effect rack. I'm using an instrument rack. Same principle. It's just loaded with synthesizers as opposed to be loaded just with effects. So I've loaded one chain with a Collision, another chain with Massive, okay? Now it's as simple as I just demonstrated. Look, I've split the range of the chain selector over two different parts, or in two different parts, and the orange chain selector now will, just like I did with my audio clip, will be automated with these MIDI clips here, okay? So if I hit the first MIDI clip, I get the Collision bass. Let's just hear it. Let's go into the user mode here. So this controller now controls a Collision bass from Ableton's onboard synthesizers. And when I hit the next one, let's do that over some music. See, I mean, it's probably not going to work. Let's try. Let's just get some music going as well. So yeah. So I get the Collision sound. However, look, if I now go and click that second clip right underneath there, the chain selector has moved over to Massive. Okay, and I'm now controlling the sound from Massive.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do anything. Eventually, on stage, I might trigger my scenes, you see, using these buttons here. I might trigger my scenes, which means that the sound of my synthesizer is automatically updated to the track I am actually playing. So I can have the exact sound I had programmed and thought after automatically set up for me onto my controller. And now, if I hit another sound here, another clip here, there's the trick. If it works, it doesn't, you know, I've got this sound from Massive right now playing. And if I hit this other clip, I get a different sound from Massive playing. And if I hit the next one, I get a different sound from Massive. Now, Massive is one of my favorite synths, and I know a lot of you out there do use Massive extensively. So how can we do this? It's really simple to program. Okay, first of all, you probably understood now, with what I've just been through, how I did to change from one synthesizer to the next. However, I'm going to show you that quickly. Okay, so I just erased that instrument rack there, right? And I go and grab a brand new instrument rack from my instrument tab here, right? And I load it there. It's empty right now. I go and grab some kind of bass sound, shall we? Let's just go air tube bass. I just load that into the rack, okay? So there it is. However, I now have, the chains available. So I'm gonna go and get another bass sound. This time I'm gonna load it onto a different chain. All right, so now both chains receive the sound. Doesn't sound exactly as I want it to, does it? I'm gonna load another chain, but this time I load it with the massive. Okay, so 3 chains. Just to demonstrate how I could easily switch between the chains here. Let's just go over to the chain setup here. I'm going to move one of the chain all the way to the right, select all the chain, right click, select all the chain, right click, and now go distribute range equally. Okay. And that has spread them evenly across the 128 increments. Cool. Now, just like we did earlier on, let's just set this up. These are MIDI clips, not audio this time. Okay, they set up on the track where the instrument rack is loaded. Now, you could think, all right, why don't you have, Freddie, the monitor in switch enabled? This monitor switch means I don't have to have the record button on, and I can trigger the sounds. And my control messages are being sent over to the instrument. Yeah. However, the program changes that we're about to program do not reach the instrument if you're on monitor in. So you have to have the monitor auto and the track armed. Okay. That way, the program changes are going to reach the instruments just like we want them to. So let's first initiate the chain changes so I can demonstrate that. So I just select the first clip, right? I move over to my chains. I set this little orange guy up. I go back to my clip. I find a position and I lock it with a node. I can get another clip going, duplicate it. I'll just delete the node instead. There you go. Come on, go away. A bit fiddly sometimes. There you go. And I now move the range across the next blue strip. I locate where the position is, right there, and I lock it. Mm-hmm. Now, when I hit the first clip, I get the air bass. I hit the second clip, and you can see the orange guy moving. I got a different sound automatically like that. Yeah, so nice. That's how you can jump from a preset in Ableton to another preset. And it's really quick, sharp, there's no click whatsoever. Better even, if a chain doesn't receive the MIDI signal, it doesn't drag any CPU off your computer. Okay. Here goes the trick. So you can have 10, 20 different presets loaded in your rack. As long as they do not receive the signal, they're almost CPU free. Yeah, and I did the test with the CPU checking and everything. This is just working fine. Yeah. So that's really good, isn't it? I was a bit scared. I was like, oh, hold on a minute. On stage, I don't want to have 15 synthesizers loaded into my platform. This is going to drag everything down. This is going to slow everything up down. And so I was a bit reluctant. Anyway, we checked, and that's it. The CPU stays quite down, and it's only being used for the specific preset or synthesizer that receives the MIDI messages. Fantastic. Right, now, further, we still have time for that one, yeah?
Yeah, we've still got time, yeah.
Cool. Well, you all probably want to know, how do we set up a Massive to have different preset changes? That's an interesting topic. So, my third clip here, all right, I'm just going to make sure that the orange little strip here works for us. Okay, I'm just going to move it to the Massive preset right there. Okay, just going to do the same thing I just did just now, yeah, and just lock it in there, yeah, good. I can delete these guys here. There we go. So that's now the Massive selector. Massive selector. And you have to say that joke, don't you?
Yes.
There you go. There you go, that's Massive, all right. And so if you go to the browser section here, onto the right-hand side you have the programs, okay? You can now enable that and load any sound you want. Okay, so I'm just gonna go and try some sounds. I'm just gonna drag them into the list here, right? And you see you can there make up your own sort of list of presets. You just drag them in there, you save it, call it point blank, for instance. There, save, okay. All right, so I'm just gonna make sure it's working first of all. Let's just double click. You see that the preset loads automatically. Next one. Yeah, see, so the sounds are there. All right, so now you see there's a little number next to these sounds, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that's the program they will respond to, the program number they will respond to. So I'm gonna go over to my clip, all right, and on the MIDI clips in Ableton Live, I don't know if you've ever clocked on that, you have here at the bottom program changes, banks, sub-banks, and programs. So this is, you know, a hierarchy between the sounds on synthesizers. At the top layer you have the banks, and then you have the sub-banks, and then the programs within the banks. But that gives you, you know, depending on the synth, that can give you like hundreds of different sounds, because each sub-bank will have, I don't know, 12 or 16 sound, maybe 128 sound in fact, more like. And then, you know, there's going to be 16 of them, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot of possibilities. The program is all you need, really, unless you have more than, I think, 128, sounds. You know, the program's all you need. So I go over and set up program 1 for the first clip. I'll copy it over twice. The second clip is going to have program 2. Right there. And program 3 right there at the bottom. All right, let's try it. I hit the first one. I got a specific sound. I hit the second one. Different sound. Fantastic, isn't it? And third one. And voila. So these are things that are useful. I feel that everything we've looked at today can be used for many people, just as live set or as DJ sets. Okay, the first technique with audio effect can very be applied to your DJ sets, your mashups and everything. Now, the second technique, when you're playing an instrument, well, you know, it's down to you. If you're doing a DJ set, I'm not entirely sure that's what you want. However, you know, when you're doing a DJ set, it's quite neat to have a little control that sends sort of like washers and razors and folders that you've designed with a little synthesizer, so you can have actually different, you know, sounds every time you hit. That could be useful. Yeah,
and would you recommend color coding depending on the synth? So Massive is green, for example.
Yeah, I guess the way I see it anyway, I mean, you know, everybody uses Ableton in different ways. Yeah. Totally. The way I see it for a live set anyway is that I would usually have, you know, for every track in my composition and in my performance, and I've got 4 here, you can see the color coding here, brown, green, red, and blue. These are different tunes. And so I would often probably have that, you know, color coded the same way you're color coding the tune, yeah? So that somehow is the sound I would use for this track or with this track. And again, you know, red here. And then again and again and again, you get me. So that every time, and I duplicate it 4 times, so no matter what scene I hit, I should have the right sound somehow. Yeah, that's the way I see it for a live set performance type, you know. That would make sense in my opinion.
Okay, so got quite a lot of questions, but just keep them coming because we've got one more thing to look at. Which is
do we have time for that?
Yeah.
Great. All right, there's an extra thing. I wasn't sure we would have time to look at that. Right.
I think we should.
Okay, we should. Yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, good. All right, we created a brand new, let's say, audio track. Okay, there it is. Let's stick it in the middle. Right, I love racks, and you know they allow you to do many different things and bring you know your performance to a higher level. Let's have a look. Just for example, you know, you have a rack and it's an empty container, like we said earlier on, and let's say, okay, I'm going to load a frequency shifter. I love that effect. Frequency shifter and a delay. All right, there, all in the same kind of chain. This time, there's in a series sort of fashion. You know, the signal travels from left to right. You know, the first effect transforms the signal and passes the result of the transformation over to the next effect, and then it goes over back to the channel strip. So what we can do with the macros is pretty interesting. Look, I could say, right, I'm going to move, let's say, the fine on my on my frequency shifter with that macro over here, okay? I'm gonna say, right, I want it to go, and we've been over that a second ago with you guys, yeah? So I just don't explain that again. I'm just setting up a range for my mapping, all right? And I move the dial. You see the fine on my frequency shifter only goes from 0 to 500. That's great. And I could also say, right, I wanna say, introduce a little bit of delay in there, and I want the delay, let's say, to be repitched, like so. And so I'm going to introduce a little bit of delay here, and I'm going to move the time with the same macro. And I'm going to say, right, however, the time I want it to go, from 1 to 100, for instance, for example, yeah. And that's pretty cool because you have different ranges and you can map different parameters on different effects to the same macro. So now one dial here, that dial here, controls both effects with various range. I don't know, how does it, shall we hear it? I'm not sure how it's going to sound, yeah? We'll just try it, shall we? Let's try it on the melody again. See what happens. It's quite always interesting. I might have to come up with some wicked manipulation here. I might not want to lose it. Let's try it. Let's solo that. Okay. Bit quirky, maybe. Okay, but that's pretty cool because two effects are moving and it's, with various range. That's pretty cool. However, for years, there's something I wanted to do and I could not do. I wanted to say to that macro, from 0 to 64, halfway through the macro, you automate a frequency shifter. However, the delay only starts moving from 64 to 127. Right. This cannot be done, or could not be done, until Bento-san from DJ Tech Tool came up with the most amazing thing ever, Mapulator. Let's go and check it out. I'm going to look for it in my browser here, and it should be somewhere here. No, it's not. In Max for Live, yes, it's got to be in there, isn't it? Yes, Mapulator. It's a free plugin. You download it from the DJ Tech Tool site, and you have to register, and then they give it to you. It's brilliant. It doesn't really work with 64-bit. Yeah, you have to be on 32-bit. Yeah. So here goes what it does. All right, I'm going to redo all of this, okay? So I'm just going to load Mapulator there. This is what it looks like. It's a Max for Live plugin. You need to have Max for Live installed. If you haven't got Max for Live installed anyway, do it now, yeah? You're missing out big time on what Ableton has to offer. And I know it's a bit of a workaround to you have to install Max MSP, you have to point out Ableton in the preferences, but do it, yeah? Take the time to do it. You don't imagine what you're missing out if you don't do it. So let's go over to an audio effect rack. Blah, 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 blah. There you go. All right, so that's my rack now. I'm just going to get some different effects, maybe a flanger, and we'll get some kind of delay again, right? Ping pong, all right? Now, I'm going to load Mapulator in there as well. I'm just going to load it before the flanger, for example. Okay, so this is Mapulator Pips. It's got 8 parameters you can set up yourself. So let's determine what are these parameters. Let's say, okay, let's actually load another effect just to make it even more interesting. Right, I'm going to go dry and wet on the flanger. I'm going to learn, and you see automatically Mapulator is mapped it to parameter 1. I'm going to go parameter 2. I want the envelope on the flanger. That's it. Press the learn button. That's it. It's enabled. Parameter 3. I want the dry and wet on my ping pong delay. Parameter 4. I want my feedback on my delay. And parameter 5. I want the downsample on my redux. 5 parameters. I have now a graph here. The graph, if you may, goes from 0 to 107. And 127 is the MIDI range. And in fact, it matches this smart button. Can you see the lines moving here? And it goes from 0 to 1 to 7. So I could map that to my controller. Let's do this straight away so we don't have to do it afterwards. Just MIDI map it. Look, it goes blue. Just, turn the dial you want to assign to it. Done. Or maybe you do this one, okay? Good. Now it's a sine, okay? Easy peasy. So now on the graph, I'm going to now determine what happens over time. What effect over the range of the MIDI range. Yep. So I'm going to go parameter. All right, let's go first one in. Dry and wet with the flanger. All right, the flanger dry and wet, let's say, goes quickly up. About to 50% here. All right, and it stays all the way, and then starts falling down around here. Yeah. All right, cool. And then the second parameter, which is the envelope modulation of the flanger, let's say, goes up right there, starts going up there, and then falls down just like the dry and wet. Okay. Now, what I'm going to say is the ping pong delay doesn't actually come into play up until halfway through the dial, 64 for example. And there, my delay just goes 50% up. And now, yeah, this is getting really fun. You're going to see what happens here. This is really cool. Let's just make that happen. So that's what the feedback, okay, the feedback goes up, all the way up. And finally, I'll have a little touch of redux towards the very end of my dial. Right there, okay. So now, watch carefully all these parameters on the effects. We have the dry and wet moving, we're gonna have the envelope moving later on, then we're gonna have the dry and wet on the ping pong moving, while this dry and wet's starting falling, then we're gonna have the feedback going slowly up all the way to the end, and the redux coming up towards the end. You ready? I'm moving the dial, look at all these parameters moving together. Dry and wet, envelope, then halfway through the dial, the ping pong starts coming into play while the flanger goes down, the feedback of the ping pong goes up, and towards the end I've got a fat down sample coming in. I'm not sure how that's going to sound at all. Let's try.
Let's find out.
What's your ears, guys? Flanger. Delay. Fat redux towards the end. And backwards. Right, so, wow.
Yeah, being able to make something go down as other things go up within the same map is amazing. Yeah.
This is mind-blowing, mind-blowing.
Potentially.
I've never met Bento-san, but thank you, Bento-san, for coming up with this thing. I use it all the time. It's amazing. One dial on your controller can turn from a flanger to a delay, become whatever you want. Over the range of a dial, you can have 4 or 5 effects coming one after the other. And if you're clever about it, just one effect can actually morph into different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wicked.
Nice one.
Wicked.
So,
Brilliant.
let's jump straight into questions. Let me just have a look here. I definitely saw some. If you do have any more questions, do keep them coming. We'll try and get them all answered. Someone has asked, Miroslav Laho says, is it possible to map more clips from other tracks to be affected by one effect via an auto group, same chain, and map multiple clips on the same value?
Well, I'm trying to think, all right. Well, that would be routing it, yes. You know, with dummy clips?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible. Shall I show that quickly?
Yeah,
Right.
so when you have the chain selector across multiple tracks, essentially, been able to... With
Yeah,
one.
yeah, I think we can do that, Miroslav. I think we can do this. Let's try. This is getting better. You gave us a good idea, and then Miroslav's got another idea. This is getting better by the minute. Yes, now I thought about the dummy clip before I started the demo, and I think it's a very valid point. So I'm just going back to the original document, if Ableton doesn't take too long. But in theory, Miroslav, yes, you would. What you do, you route your different channels over to a group. So let's say melody 1, melody 2 here gets grouped into, let's go, dummy is going to be called. Okay, so I created a new audio track. I opened the I/O section of Ableton Live here, all right? And I'm going to tell these two channels, these two tracks, you're flowing through the dummy track right there. Now the dummy track is ready to receive these two sounds. Ooh, ooh, sexy. Let's just move it. And instead, I'm going to move the audio effect rack. Oh, I'm not sure this is going to work, guys. Because if I move the audio effect rack over to the dummy, now yes, both sounds, both channels, both clips are getting affected by the effect. However, that might work. Okay, let's just load any old audio clip on there. It doesn't matter what audio clip you load on there because we ain't going to hear it. It's called a dummy clip. Let me just rename dummy, okay? This is called a dummy clip. It's a clip that you can't hear, but actually is used to just print or write the envelopes, the movements into the rack. So yeah, that's perfectly possible. Yes, I think it's going to work. In fact, let's try. I'll open the chain. I'll set up my little orange chain selector. I go over to the clip there. Okay, it doesn't matter if there's sound in it. You ain't going to hear it because the monitor switch is on to the track. So over to the envelopes now. Chain selector has been selected automatically. I'm going to find a red line somewhere here. There it is. And that's it, yeah. Let's do another one, just to make sure that's working. And I now move this chain here on the second one. Let's just unlock that first. Yeah, and then move it, let's say there. And chain selector should be up there. Yeah, cool. And that's it. So, right, I'm playing these two sounds. I hit the dummy clip. It's now going through the quarter tone. I hit the dummy clip, and it's going over to the dub delay. Okay, so yes, this works. The mapping here remains the same. The mapping onto the macro control works the same. Okay, that would work, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
That would work. Somehow, I mean, yeah, it just means that both clips have the same effect. But that's probably what you were asking, Miroslav, I believe.
Yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Is it possible to do what you've done in session view and arrangement view in terms of mapping? That was, if I can pronounce this,
would it be possible?
Add Subliminals asked that question.
Good name.
He just says, is there an automation line in the arrangement view for the chain automation?
Oh, well, that's the question.
To move chain selector.
Should we try?
Yeah.
Try that. Yeah. On top of my head, I wouldn't say yes just now. I need to check. Which one is it? The dummy clip? Yeah. Dummy track. Let's do this. And yeah, that's a good question, really. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. There is.
Okay, cool. So you can, so if you wanted to do it across an arrangement rather than it being triggered.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure there's so much point doing it in the arrangement because you can switch the effects on and on with the bypass switch, just precisely when you want to do so.
Yeah.
It really is a technique that addresses performance. I mean, unless you're performing in the arrangement view, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, some people do that, don't they? Yeah. So yeah, one more question. It comes from Yal Bautru, who says, I have 2 MIDI control enabled, I think it means channels enabled in Live. I want to route them into 2 different instrument racks in order to play different VST drum machines independently. Is that possible?
That's of course possible. Yael, you can do this easily. Look, I'm going to create another MIDI track, yeah? This MIDI track over here, Yael, has the instrument rack we played with earlier on, yeah? And I'm going to say, okay, this second channel has a different sound. Let's just load in the old sound, yeah? This guy here. Okay, now we have 2 MIDI channels loaded with 2 different synthesizers, right? And I have 2 controllers there. And if you open your I/O section again, this is the button, the switch for it, yeah? You can specify on the MIDI from here, you can specify which controller controls a specific channel, a specific track. So now you see I've assigned the launchpad to control the one that's called manual control, and the one that's called all alone pad is now controlled with the launch control, which is this controller here. Where are the MIDI notes? Hold on this controller. I'm not fully aware yet. I think this is it here. Yeah. I know it sends MIDI notes as well. Ah, there we go. All right, so you see, Yael, if I use that controller, I'm controlling that right-hand side channel here. And if I'm now using the other controller, I'm using the other, I'm controlling the other channel, okay? So
cool.
Each controller can be dedicated that way to a specific channel. It's a really good question, in fact, because you often have conflicts between your controllers, it's often a problem. It's one of, my live set has 500 controls set up. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But what I'm saying is that, I'm fighting with conflicts all the time. Another important, on that tip, another important thing to look at when you're performing with multiple controllers, lads and ladettes, is to watch out what controller is enabled in your MIDI preferences. In fact, when I'm performing, I'm using at the moment anyway, I'm using push and the launch pad, and I'm having a few conflicts. I found out that once I've entered the user mode on push, I'm going to my preferences and I'm disabling push as a control surface on the top layer here, on the top thing, and I'm only keeping the launchpad as a freely mappable control instead, and that prevents some conflict from happening. So, you got to watch out what controls really optimize that. Make sure that if a controller doesn't need to be sent any information, make sure that its output controls are disabled, for example. Yeah. If you're not using it, if you're using it as a control surface, for example, if you're using your launchpad simply to launch the clips like I'm doing, this is like a structuring tool on stage, well, make sure it doesn't actually send any normal messages like these switches here. You see, that's the control surface that would enable, for example, the launchpad to see the clips from in the session view. And that at the bottom is the part that enables your controller, like the launchpad, to send MIDI notes and control changes, which are the other MIDI messages we sent, from user 1 and user 2. If you're not using user 1 and user 2, disable the track switch and the remote switch down at the bottom of your MIDI preferences. That's not needed. And that will introduce loads of conflicts between controllers, because if you don't specify which control specific channels, they're sending the same messages on the same MIDI channels, and sometimes Ableton cannot differentiate what controller sends them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, I think that's just about it. Samuel Mark has asked, is there a simple way of setting up light feedback effects on the Launchpad? I think he means...
Yeah, that's really simple.
Yeah.
So on the user 1 and 2, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's easy. All right, let's do it. Let's just create a new MIDI track, empty. Yeah, nothing on it. That's it. Let's enable this time. To do this, Samuel, you need to actually enable I think it's the track output. You see the Launchpad, and that's the output, not the input. The output. Well, you need the input as well. So let's do both. Okay. And you need an input and an output. In fact, the input part is what the controller sends over to Ableton Live. The output part of your preferences is what Ableton Live sends over to the controller. Now, if you want Ableton to send a message back to the controller so the controller lights up, you need to enable the output. So let's do this. Hopefully it's going to work. Look, so this now channel, this MIDI track, it's what I call a utility channel. It's a utility that doesn't do anything significant to the sound. And all my utility channels on my live sets are set up in a utility group here. So I'm going to drag that there, all right? And I'm going to call it lights bad, all right? And that's something that's collapsed. The group is collapsed on stage. I don't see that. It's right on the right-hand side there. It's not part of my live set. It does all the routing. It does all the things that are under the barnet, but I'm not seeing these tracks, these channels, okay? I've got loads of them. So now on the I/O section, Samuel again, let's open here, yeah. You say, okay, MIDI from the Launchpad, MIDI to the Launchpad. So you're creating a loop. And now when I hit my pads on the Launchpad, they lit up. And everybody in the club goes, wow, this looks light. I think you can also change the color of the light, Samuel, if you place a MIDI effect called Velocity, yeah? Place that on the track. Did I do that? There. I think if you set up a minimum out and stuff like that. No, it's not working. I can't remember how you do this. I've done it in the past. Oh yeah, there you go. See, I've got red lights. If you prefer red lights, Sam, you can have green lights and amber lights on that. On the push, you get loads more light.
Yeah, nice one. Okay, well, we're just about out of time. If you do have any more questions, do stick them on, and Freddie I'm sure he'll be happy to jump on at the end and catch any questions that we missed. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you got a lot out of that session, and you'll be playing live over the weekend. And stay tuned to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll be back next Friday for another Friday Forum. Thanks.
Bye, guys.